Hey there, everybody, it's Russ. It's been a couple weeks since the Bespoke Dresden show, but there was just so much cool stuff that came out of that show that I thought I would do one more video talking about some of the more interesting trends that I saw among makers. Fans of the channel know that we've got our finger on the pulse on what's going to be cool in 5 or 10 years. Will these trends blow up? Who knows? The first interesting trend I saw was actually combining racks with cordage. This trend, when I saw it on a couple of different bikes, just seemed really cool. If you think about it, there are some amazing materials out there. I mean, heck, we've got wheels with fiber spokes now. So why not incorporate some of that thinking into rack? There's a couple of advantages. One, from a design perspective, it lets you be a little bit more creative, but also cuts down on weight without sacrificing too much functionality. Probably one of the best examples I saw of this was at the Kobol Bikes booth. Here he made a custom rack and wove some strong fiber material around it. This provides a platform for setting things on there, but reduces weight. Another interesting application of this was at the Don Sebastiano booth. He had this mini rack that acted as a standoff for a bike bag, but when you weren't running a bike bag there, it had a crisscrossing cordage design, so you could put things like a jacket or your gloves or some other winter layer. I think that's actually pretty genius, because sometimes you're just going on a quick ride, you don't need a full-on bag, but it might be chilly in the morning, and by having cordage integrated into this mini kind of standoff rack, it makes the perfect place to put those layers. The next interesting trend I saw at Bespoke was truss forks, truss bikes, truss everything. Expand this also to include using smaller multiple tubes to do the job of one tube. So that might not technically be a truss, but in this similar vein. There were a ton of really cool applications of this design. Probably my favorite was this rando bike from Avalanche. Beautifully constructed with an integrated rack into the fork. Talking to the builder, she said by having those opposing tubes, it helped fight braking forces. You get the strength and the stiffness of like kind of a traditional fork, but it just looks light and airy because of the smaller tubing. Another really interesting application of this truss fork design, but with a twist, is once again at the Don Sebastiano booth. Here he's got a custom linkage fork that looks very truss-like, but it does have built-in suspension. Moving to the smaller multiple tube set use, you've got the mountain bike by Good Grief. He said he used a lot of FEA analysis to see where the stress points were in the frame, and instead of approaching the problem using gussets as one traditionally would, he integrated the use of smaller tubes to help build strength in that area. Similarly, we see something like this with the bike over at Project D. And in this bike, he uses 2 seat stays to form a double top tube. So this makes for a really slender looking profile, but still supposedly has the strength and rigidity of a larger diameter top tube. And of course, the trustiest one of them all is the modern Pedersen bike over at the Garage 66 booth, where basically the entire bike looks like a truss bike. Really fascinating design with the suspension seat. There's just a lot going on with this bike. The next interesting trend was trying to develop a custom alloy fork that didn't look like an alloy fork, if you know what I mean. The builder at Project D, I think, put it best when he said he wanted a fork that didn't look like it was from the 1970s, but also didn't look like a piece of plumbing. So how he got around this, as well as other builders in the show, was to use 3D printing. So in that instance, he had a 3D printed crown that was rounded, a little bit more sculpted, so it looked kind of like a carbon fork, but was indeed alloy. Another brand that was there that incorporated this into their production frames was the brand Chiru. Here they did it in titanium. So again, it kind of looks like that flattish carbon fork profile, but it's 3D printed titanium. I think we're going to see more of this in the future for those that still want the qualities of an alloy fork, but also want a little bit more modern aesthetic. Going back to bags, another big trend I saw was the heavy use of Fidlock. It might be because the show is Dresden and Fidlock is a German brand, but there was a lot of fresh applications of Fidlock things that I'd never seen before. A good example of this was the bags by Dyed in the Wool. They use these Fidlock magnetic nubbins that they put on the top to make top tube bags and frame bags a little bit more quick release. I saw other brands take this up to the next level where they actually included the Fidlock nubbins to the side of a rack. So instead of attaching a pannier in the traditional kind of hook system, instead you would just line up the mounting points on the bag to those Fidlock nubbins. I'm not sure if that's the technical term, but that's what I'm calling it. Probably the most creative use of Fidlock in the bike bag was by the brand Witslingers. Here there was Fidlock in the straps, there was Fidlock mounting it to the rack, and also this boa-like Fidlock closure to secure the bag to the front rack. He also uses this design on a seat rack, so pretty interesting stuff. I don't think I've seen US makers embrace Fidlock quite like these European bag makers have, but I think it just opens up a lot of possibilities. So another interesting trend that I spotted that you guys know I love is the micro/mini cargo bike. Probably the best example of this at the show is, of course, the brand Monopole. I've reviewed it on the channel. Gary's Bike Projects has a build. Probably Riding has one, and it seems as if John from the Radavis has one. So I feel like this is a good sign that the micro/mini cargo bike is going to be a hot new thing. Aside from Monopole, there was also the small Berlin brand Melara, which has a really interesting front platform system that kind of sets back a little bit from the top tube, giving you a bunch more space. And another great example was the Abbas Longtail. In this instance, it's not like a front loader bike, but kind of like a extra cycle, but shrunk down, putting the load to the ground. I think of all the trends that I've listed so far, the micro cargo bike trend probably has the most steam. Definitely in Europe, we'll see in the US. I just feel like people live in smaller spaces here, so the need for a smaller cargo bike is more obvious. But in the US, if you have like a 2-car garage, then you're just like, why? These were some of the trends that caught my eye. What do you guys think of them? Which one of these do you think will blow up? And if you guys like our coverage and want to support the channel, please consider joining us on Patreon or picking up some merch. Hold on, don't go anywhere. We've got new stickers and of course our alt cycling shirt. So you're officially invited to join the club of bike weirdos. As always, everybody keep the supple side down.